And we are online. So I streamed the link on YouTube. So we can actually start with the meeting. Hi, Rami. Thank you for joining me today and to help me out with the careers in international affairs. We will have like people watching us on YouTube and they have the link. So whether they join us or not, I streamed the link on YouTube. So we can, okay. So I made a mistake. I put everything not muted. So Rami, today's topic is careers in international affairs. And I was thinking if you can share like the education that you actually need to become a diplomat or just to get a career in international affairs. I think that's the one of the most important questions that we get at the corner at our Education USA Advising Center. So if you can like represent yourself, your background, and maybe to give some advice and tips to our students.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Boyana. It's great to do more online programming and to talk about a topic that is near and dear to my heart. And hopefully, after I talk a little bit about my background, people will have a better understanding that there is no one way to get to the career in international affairs that you want. You know, you can go the traditional route, you can have a route that's a little bit more circuitous, but at the end of the day, you know, you can still do what it is that you want to do. So I say all that to say my original career plans were not actually to become a diplomat and join the US Foreign Service. I wanted to become a professor. And so my undergraduate degree is actually in French literature. And it was interesting because I sat in, while I was an undergraduate student, on several career information sessions with current and retired US diplomats. And one question that always came up in those sessions was effectively which major, which degree program is best for people who want to be diplomats. And the response from senior leaders who would do these presentations was always the same. And they said that students who major in English, of all subjects, are the best prepared because diplomacy is all about communication, both written and oral. So I think we can broaden that from English to what we would consider the humanities in general. So philosophy, history, languages, anything that really forces you to be comfortable with language, that helps you to understand nuances. And that training that you get is going to be indispensable when you're a diplomat, regardless of, you know, whether you're at the start of your career, as I am, whether you're mid-career or even senior level. So much of what it is that I do revolves around my ability to communicate. And we often like to say that in diplomacy, sometimes, you know, it's more important to have strong relationships inside the walls of the embassy with your colleagues than it is to have external contacts. And I can tell you that that's true. We are all one team, and it is really, really important. But I'll get to that a little bit later. So my degree, as I said, is in French literature. And even though I am not currently using my French skills, I certainly am using all of the analytical tools that I developed. A significant part of my day involves reading information, and it involves synthesizing information. And I feel like my preparation at a liberal arts college through a degree in the humanities really gave me the skills, but also helped me to feel comfortable analyzing things that maybe I am not familiar with, for example. So I really think that the humanities is the way to go. But to be perfectly honest, I would say any degree program that interests you can prepare you. For example, in the US Foreign Service, we don't have a ton of engineers or biologists or chemists. And a lot of the work that we do is not that technical and specific, but my colleagues who come into the Foreign Service with those more technical backgrounds can contribute and have a much deeper understanding of certain topics that I may just, be able to figure out on a surface level. So, I mean, you may hear, particularly when we're talking about joining the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of other countries, that you have to study economics or history or political science. Not true to be a successful diplomat. So I would put that in there. What I would add, though, is it does help to have a solid founding in international relations. And that is the main reason I did my master's degree, basically in international relations. And I focused on economic development and international institutions, looking at how they're run, what are some of the major challenges that organizations like the United Nations and NATO face, and what are different models we can use to think about ways to improve cooperation and surmount a lot of the hurdles that we see, because diplomacy is often a long game. And this is a very difficult career, I think, for people who need immediately to see the results of their work. Progress is almost always glacial, and that is across the globe. I'm not talking just about Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's difficult to get significant things done to achieve major accomplishments in a short period of time. So, really having that in the back of your mind and setting your expectations is going to be very important. In terms of graduate school for international affairs or even undergraduate degrees in international relations, it's all good because it will give you a foundation of theories of international relations. You'll do a lot of case studies. Most, if not all, programs require at least one or two courses in economics. So you'll be able to better understand the relationship between politics and economics, both at the state level, but also globally. And that's so important now. Globalization is here to stay. And so much of the work that we do as diplomats is complicated or facilitated by flows of money and goods. So I think that's really important to note. So don't shy away from the economics courses. You're not going to be doing calculus all day long. It's more about understanding sort of the foundational ideas, particularly of macroeconomics, which with the right teacher and with the right amount of effort is very doable. So, that's a little bit on the educational landscape. And as I said, you can study whatever you want, and I would add wherever you want. There is always this desire to study at, the quote unquote brand name schools, because everybody knows about this school or that school. And it's true that when you study at those top tier institutions, whether it's the United States or in the UK or Germany, or, pick your country.
Samo da vas pitam, vi mene možete da čujete, jel tako? Samo ako bi mi neko rekao, bilo bi super, evo da nam se Rami vrati.
Čujemo.
Dobro.
So what I would say, though, is it's important at the end of the day to make sure that you select the program that meets your needs. And that, I think, is multifaceted. So first, a program that has the courses and the program of study that interests you. So, for example, the Harvard Kennedy School is a very, very good institution. It's a policy school. And so a lot of their courses focus on public policy and management, and less on, let's say, traditional international relations courses, which, for example, the Fletcher School at Tufts has. So, neither school is better or worse. Different schools will have a different focus. And so that's one thing you have to take into account. The second thing you have to take into account is lifestyle. And yes, graduate school is only, in the United States, in most cases, 2 years of your life for a master's degree. But particularly if you are an international student, you are going to want to be somewhere where you feel comfortable, somewhere where you can get out and really build relationships with people and experience the United States. So that means, are you okay being in a smaller town where there is nothing apart from that college or university? Do you want to be in a big city because you're interested in interning and you want to be able to get home more easily than you would be if you were in a smaller city? The other thing is, I would say there are a lot of people who believe that they have to study in Washington, D.C. or New York to have a successful career in international relations. That is totally not true. I studied in Boston. There are excellent schools across the country. The University of Denver, the Korbel School, University of Texas at Austin, Texas A&M. I mean, there are a number of excellent programs across the country, particularly if you have specific interests in regions or in policy issues. Some schools are better on climate change and the environment, for example. Others focus more on what we would consider like hard security, civil military relations. Georgetown, for example, has a program that's specifically focused on security studies. So, you have to make a decision with those factors in mind, but also with finances in mind. And I know that this is always the third rail of conversations, because studying in the United States is expensive. It costs a lot for American citizens, and it costs, in most cases, just as much for international students. Unfortunately, at the graduate level, it is very difficult to get scholarships that cover everything. To just be perfectly honest, there's an expectation that American graduate programs have when we're talking about master's degrees, that the student is bringing something to the table, because a master's degree, education in any form, is an investment in you, right? And according to the research from the United States, individuals who graduate from college will earn roughly $1 million more over the course of their career than people who enter the workforce with only a high school diploma. So, that does not mean there is no scholarship funding available. To the contrary, there is a lot of money out there. And depending on how well you have done in undergraduate courses, depending on what your level of financial need is, you could get 75, 80, 85% of your tuition, room, and board covered. But just from an expectation management perspective, the options, generally speaking, for that, what we would call in the United States the estimated family contribution, that could be money that you have saved, that could be money your family's providing, or it could be loans that you're taking out. It's unfortunate that our education across the board in the United States is so super expensive. My graduate program, for example, cost about $65,000 a year for 2 years. I think the cost of our master's programs in the United States is a major hurdle when we try to recruit international students, because there are not as many funding sources available to help bridge that gap between what your institution of choice is giving you and what you need to come up with on your own. So, I bring this up just so people know from the beginning that this is an investment in every sense of the word. And, you have to have a discussion with yourself, with your family, about how much money you're willing to put in, or how much money you are willing and able to get in the form of a loan. One of the really common questions when I talk with American students, both about undergraduate options and graduate options, is, they say, I really want to go to this school and I got in, but I'm not getting a full scholarship. I'm only getting 50%. But I got into this other school, which is not as quote unquote prestigious, but they're giving me 100%. I won't pay anything. Where do I go? And that is a very personal decision, but as far as I'm concerned, the global economy is not getting better right now. It's becoming increasingly difficult, I would, just from my observations, to move freely on the international labor market. And that's, I think, only partially because of COVID. We're losing more and more jobs to automation, among other phenomena. So, you have to be very cognizant of the fact that it's going to be difficult to find a stable, full-time, good-paying job in the industry of your choice as soon as you graduate from undergrad or a master's program. So, I know people, for example, who ended up with, let's say, $80,000 US in debt from our 2-year graduate program. And it took them, through no fault of their own, 4 months, 6 months to find a job. Some people were employed, but have a starting salary of $30,000, $45,000 a year. it's going to take them a really long time to pay that back. So, finances, unfortunately, are a major part of the conversation, because you don't want to be in a position where you're effectively starting your life at age 45 because it took you 20 years to pay off your 70,000 in debt. So I think that's just something to keep in mind. To talk a little bit more broadly about careers in international affairs, I think very often people get caught up on, I have to be a diplomat. I want to join the Bosnian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I want to become a Canadian diplomat or a German diplomat. And, as a US diplomat, I firmly understand that. And that is I would say, most common and traditional option. That being said, you also have to think about international organizations like the United Nations, NATO, OSCE, and all of these organizations have jobs that go beyond what people assume to be traditional diplomatic work, attending meetings with leaders and basically, hobnobbing with elites and then telling their capitals what's happening. I mean, yes, that is a part of what we do, but there are so many other jobs. We have to keep, our facilities up and running. So we have colleagues who are in charge of all of the management aspects, budgeting and finance, human resources. We have translators. We have cleaning crews. So there are all of these options within the field of international affairs that, you don't just have to be in the traditional mold. And for some people, being that sort of quote unquote traditional diplomat is not really rewarding. If, for example, you want to see the immediate impact of your work, being a consular officer is probably a better option than being a political officer, because when you're helping people who are trying to get a visa or need an emergency passport, I mean, you can see right there the effect of your denial or your approval of a visa or whatever the consular service is. So don't get caught up in just the traditional understanding of what it means to be a diplomat. Apart from bilateral and multilateral missions, cities are becoming more and more important and are operating more and more internationally. So you might look for opportunities. Let's say, I don't know, let's just pick a city in the United States. The city of Atlanta, I know, has an office that specifically works to identify opportunities for foreign companies to invest in Atlanta, but also to create opportunities for businesses headquartered in Atlanta to enter foreign markets. So this is sort of an additional track of diplomacy that complements the more traditional state to state. And I think we're going to continue to see more of those types of formal sub-state interaction. For example, there is a program, the Sister City program, that we, through our Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, help to promote. And that basically provides cities in the United States matches with cities across the globe in order to find opportunities for partnership and innovation and implementation of best practices. The other side of international affairs is, looking at NGOs. And this could be Catholic Relief Services, for example. It could be looking at a lot of implementing partners for organizations like USAID or development banks. I mean, they're doing monitoring and evaluation. The sky is really the limit in terms of opportunities, in terms of what it means to actually have a career in international affairs. Global business very much is a player, particularly with globalization. Doing strategy consulting for companies who are trying to break into a certain market, or they're trying to figure out what the level of political risk is. International law. There are so many ways you can be involved in international affairs that go beyond just being a diplomat. And, believe me, I love my job. I very much like what I do. But the more focused you get on one thing, the harder it is to see all of the opportunities that are in front of you. And the other thing is, we live in, at least in advanced industrialized economies, what is increasingly known as the gig economy, where instead of having, one career from start to finish when you retire, you do a series of jobs, maybe for 2 to 4, 3 to 5 years at a time. So don't think, that just because you start in one place, it's hopeless, you can't go anywhere else. Everything you do will help you or can help you in your next job. And, one of the things that a lot of diplomatic recruiters will say after they talk about schools and degree programs is they'll talk about work experience. What is the most relevant work experience? And I would say 9 times out of 10, everyone will say customer service. I won't say that the customer is always right in diplomacy, but it is very true that we as diplomats have to really guard our reputation. And we have to take what we say and do seriously, because I can't write a blank check to a government. So my influence is limited to the relationships that I have and the information that I can get and can give. So in that vein, knowing how to work with people who might be very nice but not competent, or who are maybe very competent but not nice. I mean, you have everyone. And then when we talk about getting things done in another language, that really can complicate things. So all of the skills that you're building, whether you're working, I don't know, at a store in Delta Planet, or you are a waiter or a waitress, I mean, those are jobs that are going to arguably prepare you best for a career in diplomacy. So let me stop there. I know I have been droning on for quite a while, and open it up to questions that people might have, or questions that Bojana might have.
I was just actually typing to let them know that I know there are some students that study at the Faculty of Political Sciences, and I know them really well, so maybe they have the questions. So I will leave the floor for a couple of minutes. If they don't, I do have a couple of questions. So, imate li slobodno?
Da. I have one question. Well, I'm student at, as Bojana said, at Faculty of Political Science, and I'm interested to go to study on master program in the United States, international relations, or say international security or strategic studies, something like that. And I would like to, after my master degree, to stay in the United States and work for private sector as a consultant, for example, for some consultant firm like Kissinger Associates or McKinsey or Albright Group. That's maybe the best consultant firm in the United States, and I would say in the world. But I know that maybe it's not possible immediately after my graduation. So that's something that I would like to accomplish. So maybe some recommendations and some advice for me.
Okay, there we go. Now I can unmute. All right. So that's a very good question. I think the first thing I would say is everything is possible. I mean, yes, to be perfectly honest, it is difficult to stay in the States beyond OPT, which is a totally different conversation that we can have another time. But it is doable. And I think one of the things that you can do to put yourself in a good position is select a school that is going to give you the skills that you need to succeed in the job you want. I mean, yes, to some degree, it can be important where you went to school, in that there are certain programs that I would say generally feed into Albright Stonebridge and Kissinger Associates and some of these other consulting firms. I would say, though, in most cases, from what I've seen and among the people that I know, you are not able to get in directly after you graduate. So you need to have some work experience either prior to grad school, or you need to have some experience right after grad school before you can get in. I mean, some of these firms do have, they do have sort of pipeline programs, but I think just again, from an expectation management perspective, setting your sights on a variety of things and building connections with people in other organizations in different sectors will be good. I think the other thing you can do is target, particularly if you're interested in political risk, seriously consider going to Washington, D.C. I mean, there are very good schools there. They're very expensive, but that's where the headquarters of most of these firms are. And so, yes, you might be able to, get a position, or, let's say you go to school in San Francisco and there's a company that has an office there, great. But I think when possible, you want to start where the company is based. You want to start at the home office. That would be my short general advice. I mean, we can chat more offline specifically, but I would say it's not a lost cause, but it definitely is a long-term proposition. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you so much.
I just wanted to say that I'm sharing, while Rami's talking, I'm sharing some useful links that you can use, like to filter universities if you want to find certain degree, scholarship, loan, whatever. So I will be sharing that. Please, if anyone has any other question for Rami. Mhm.
I have a question.
Okay.
Yes.
It's basically the same as Sajan. And the only difference is that I want to have a career in some think tanks. I want my career to more be academic. What would be the right path for me? I mean, me and Sajan have should enroll in different programs. His programs are more like skills based, and mine are more research based. Is that true? And if so, what experiences should I have, and where should I work? Like before my first position in United States.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's interesting because you will see that most of the what are considered to be top tier international affairs programs have master's programs and doctoral programs. What I would say is, and within those programs, within the international affairs programs, I would say 90 to 95% of the students are there to do a master's degree and become practitioners. And then 5% will continue on and do a PhD. So, you can go that route. So for example, where I went to school, everyone had to do a master's degree first, or you had to, before applying to the PhD, or you had to have a master's degree from another school. When we're talking about PhDs at international relations programs, like Columbia and Johns Hopkins and Tufts and Harvard, those programs are most likely going to want you to have some work experience. So that doesn't mean you have to have practiced in, conflict resolution for 20 years, but they want to see that you have a little bit of field experience. On the other hand, if you are thinking you're more interested in applying to do like a traditional PhD in political science with a focus in international relations, then this is a little bit of a different conversation. One is not better or worse than the other. It depends on what you're trying to get out of your education. And people who get PhDs at the Kennedy School or at Fletcher or at any of the other international relations or policy schools get jobs, I would say, just as easily as tenure track faculty members, for example, or as researchers at government or non-government institutions. So, it very much is about personal preference. And as someone who accepted a PhD offer and then rejected it effectively to become a diplomat, I can tell you that the best advice that I got when I was looking at programs, this was in literature, not international affairs, is go to the best program that you can get into that has scholars doing work that interests you. In the United States, a PhD program, if you come in without a master's degree, is going to take you 5 years minimum, because it's not just research. There's a teaching component. You have multiple exams that you have to do. It's a ton of reading. So be in a place you want to be in with professors who can really support you and the research it is you want to do. So hopefully that's helpful. And again, I'll add, happy to talk more one-on-one and provide my thoughts in more detail.
Thank you a lot for your advice. It's very helpful.
Great, happy to help.
I would like to share an advice if Rami, it's okay with you.
Yeah.
I will. I know that a lot of people are actually thinking what to study, what the job would be perfect for them, and everything. Please look out at the websites of the universities. You have like admission college counseling. You have like to take a personality test. You can also do a lot of faculties here have actually a center that can do a personality test to tell you what the job, what's going to be the best job for you, what is like really good for you to work on. So, and also the advising centers in Mostar, Sarajevo, Banja Luka, Tuzla, we are all here to help you out to see what would you like to study, but please pay attention to the admission requirements. That's the thing that most of the students, when they're applying, especially when they're more than eager to apply to the universities such as Princeton, Yale, whatever, who have great reviews, but you're looking for scholarship. You're also need to, if you're going for a master's degree, you will have to have some papers that you have published while studying. So everything is going to be like a whole package for you to give them, and then to enroll your studies. Nadam se da ovo hoću da kažem, sorry Rami, I will switch, it's going to be much easier. Hoću samo da kažem da je mnogo bolje kada idete i sad slušam pitanje od Srđana i Sare, uvek je jako bitno da vi uradite jedan test ličnosti i vidite, to smatram da je od izuzetne važnosti, da biste znali u koje usmerenje vi da idete. Postoji mogućnost da mislite da će nešto vama dobro ići, da se to možda prosto ne desi. Prosto da vas odvuče u drugu stranu. Jako je bitno sve svoje vidike ispitati i videti šta vas zapravo interesuje. Svaki univerzitet, poput malo jačih, Princeton, Yale i tako dalje, imaju taj counseling koji je potpuno, evo sad ovde igrom slučaja besplatan. Pogledajte, testirajte, vidite. Ovde sam poslala i filtere koji vam daju. Ono što je specifično za studente Bosne i Hercegovine jeste da mi uvek svi tražimo stipendiju. Zato vas molim, pogledajte admission requirements, pogledajte koji GPA, koji su testovi i ostalo, da biste i tražili karijeru, da biste bili jedan vid diplomata, u većini slučajeva su tu i konekcije. Znači, pored toga radimo i na toj jednoj široj slici koja se zove personal development. And I will now stop talking and please ask Rami whatever you want to ask, guys. Please feel free. Maybe we don't have any questions. Yeah.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, I do have a question. I'm sorry.
Okay.
There is only one question that I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
When you said you have a degree in French, and do you think that only, you said that the network was a huge part of your profession. Can you please explain us what networking is? Because I think that's the term that we are not using here enough, and we are not working on it.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think it's a term that's overused in the United States. In brief, networking is effectively meeting people, getting to know them, and understanding how you can work with them to get what it is that you want done. Effectively, where do your interests, let's say as a foreign diplomat, match up with their interests as, let's say, a private citizen of the country you're working in, of maybe they're a minister or an assistant minister. And so much of my job here in Banja Luka depends on my ability to talk to people and share information, know with whom I can share information, and know whom I can contact if I have questions. Diplomacy is all about spending time with people. And I sometimes say to friends that you really have to be like part anthropologist, part sociologist, part psychologist to be a diplomat, because I spend very little time during my workday sitting, let's say, at my desk, not in touch with anyone, whether it's colleagues in Sarajevo or in our office here, although everything is online right now, so there are no in-person meetings, or whether I'm talking with people in government or NGOs, students. I can't get what it is that I need done when I don't know people. And so that means before this current lockdown, I spent a lot of time in kafanas and have had way too much coffee and the rakia across the RS, but that's part of the job. I live here full time, so I have a personal need and desire to get to know the culture, the language, but also from a work perspective. When I have a question about something, let's say that a media source is publishing and wants our comment on, and I need to figure out, okay, is what's being published actually accurate? That should not be the first time I'm reaching out to a contact in a ministry or in a municipality, right? So there's a saying basically that diplomacy is like tending a garden. So it's not particularly rewarding immediately. You spend a lot of time, watering it and pulling out weeds, but eventually you get to this nice, beautiful plant, and that's your success. I would say that's very true. There are a range of examples from across the globe that I think point that out. It's very difficult to effectively be a diplomat when you are sort of sitting in your office doing nothing, or sitting in your office just reading the newspaper. That's one small part of what it is that we do.
Thank you. So the reason why I ask this is because I usually give a task to students who are going to go to get their master's degree in the United States, and it concerns mostly with the professors, with the admission office, whether they have sent some kind of question, send their work that they have done, and I usually give them a task. If you have the students who have the same GPA, but you have one student who has reached out to the university and made a connection with the professor, whom do you think he or she will choose? So that's why I'm talking about networking, because I think it's very important that you work on your personal development, on your personal skills, on your communication skills, because if you're getting especially master's degree, those are the things that everybody are gonna look for. So do we have any other question, please? Well, I think that's it. I would like to say thank you, Rami, for this amazing presentation. It was really interesting. Even I found out some new things that I actually didn't know before. Thank you very much. So do you want to say anything? How can they reach out to you? Yes, that's the question.
Yeah, so feel free. You can send me an email. My email address is blair.r@state.gov, B